All right, let's go ahead and read, starting in verse 13 of 1 Thessalonians 4, and we'll go ahead and read through the end of the book. So starting in verse 13 all the way through chapter 5. Actually, no, let's just do 13 through verse 11 of chapter 5, and then we can read the next part if we get there. But let's focus on this section here, dealing with the day of the Lord. So 1 Thessalonians 4, starting in verse 13. I have the New American Standard tonight, so I think I have 2 more hard copies of different translations left, so then we'll have to cycle back through, but New American Standard tonight. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve, as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. For this we say to you, by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. Now as to the times and the epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you. For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. While they are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them, suddenly like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, and that the day would overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness, so then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. So those who sleep do their sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will live together with him. Therefore encourage one another and build up one another, just as you also are doing. All right, what sticks out? What comments, what words, what ideas, what sorts of things? Yeah. Yep. But at the same time, there's that parallel, right? Like the imagery, even though it's not the same specific idea, it's interesting that the metaphor applies to both. The metaphor of sleep to the dead versus the same metaphor to those that are unaware, unserving of God are also asleep. That they are dead as well. It's kind of interesting. That word is powerful in that way there. It's not negative in the first sense and it's negative in the second, but it does highlight kind of the imagery behind the whole context, right? About those who are either asleep because they've passed away, or they're asleep because they've never been resurrected from the watery grave of baptism. But either case, it's like this sleep that's overtaken them, and it's kind of an interesting metaphor there. But you're right, like the fact that he repeats that is certainly interesting, back to back. Yeah, Rick, you had your hand up. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things in that verse that are worth like digging out, right? We talked about the asleep thing and the way that it's used in both of them, but even just in this context, not dead but asleep. I mean, that alone, that word choice alone is fascinating, isn't it? It's powerful that the New Testament writers don't talk about death, they talk about sleep. That's the way that we perceive it. There's a difference in our perception even over something like that, which I think is fascinating. But then, like you said, you go back in the verse, the first thing that's kind of striking is that he says, for if we believe that Jesus died and rose again. And I think it's interesting that he says it that way, if we believe. And I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons, and I don't know exactly why he chose those words, but to me, the reason I would write it that way is because it's a big thing to believe in. It's supernatural. It is not something that you see, right? It is what faith is in. If we believe that Jesus died and rose again. You know, the popular thing now that people like to talk about that are atheists or Bible doubters or whatever, kind of the big popular thing is, you know, there's enough data that supports the value of religious practices. So they can't attack Christianity fundamentally because there is value in prayer and these sorts of things. So they're like, so maybe just certain sects of Christianity, right, or different things about it, they'll attack that. Or then, you know, if they get past that, then they say, well, there's a lot of wisdom in the New Testament because they can't deny the idea of love. Our society loves to talk about love. But then they don't like some things, they don't accept it all. So they say, well, Jesus was just a wise teacher, right? Like that's the big thing that people say. Well, Jesus was clearly a historical figure. We can't deny that that there was actually a man called Jesus. So then it's like, what do we deny? Well, we deny then the resurrection. That's the thing that they ignore. Because if you accept that Jesus died and rose again, if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, then that means that everything else that hinges off of that now matters, right? That means that he is God. And no one wants to admit that he's God because that means you have to listen to him, right? If Jesus died and rose again, then that means that our lives should be changed, that we should be convicted, that we should listen to him. But if you deny that, then it's like, well, I can just take the parts I like and not the stuff I don't like. So now I can be this like smart, trendy person who's like, oh no, I'm not against God or the Bible. I just don't think the Bible is from God, right? I don't know about God. I'm agnostic, right? I just don't know. But there's a lot of wisdom here. And that's what captures a lot of young people now. Like that's the very thing that they struggle with is this issue, the belief that Jesus died and rose again. Because that's the thing that validates everything that he said in a way that changes who you are and changes the way you perceive the world. And that's why he says, if we believe that Jesus died and rose again. Because that's a big thing to believe in. That's a hard thing to believe in, right? Even those of us that are here, we acknowledge that's supernatural. That is a big thing to believe in, yeah. Yep. He knew he would be raised from the dead. He said he would be, and he was. Right. Yeah, it's not just I started to word that backward, but then it doesn't work the other way. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that this is evidence for who he is. But it's also an evidence that changes the world. Like it's the piece of evidence that proves it, but it's also the very thing that gives us hope, which is what he goes into in the whole next section, is how that changes us. Yeah, Michael. Yeah. That's kind of what I intended. But he also goes into chapter 5 and says, you know, you're not in darkness. So this thief in night thing's not going to catch you off guard. Yeah. And kind of, I guess the writing in the context there, you almost think, is he writing in such a way that he's hopeful for them that they're not? Or is it truly that this is one of the first time they're hearing? Yeah. Yeah, the latter idea seems probable to me, that this is the first time they're hearing it, especially since we know he was rushed out of town. Now, you would think that this would be one of the very first things he says about resurrection, but the question then about resurrection is like, when is resurrection? Like, how does that tie in? How do we believe this stuff is part of that? It also reads, though, and what's interesting about it is like, he's teaching them, but then he's also encouraging them. You know, he's not just lecturing them, he's also then saying, but we already accept all this stuff. So here in 1 Thessalonians 4, as he's going through this, he's like establishing the thing they need to know, and then he gets to chapter 5, and now it's a little bit more encouraging, you know, which is one of the reasons why we put a chapter break there, I guess. I don't know. Yep. It's not just that you believe it, it's caused you to do something. Yep. Yeah. That's the part that's the hard part. Right. Yeah.
They get it, but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's the next step.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little bit outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but I think it's worth backing up a little bit to why this matters so much, right? Like, I mean, you go back and read Ecclesiastes, right? And it's all vanity and striving after the wind. It doesn't matter what you do. The wise man, the fool, they all die. Rich man, poor man, they all die. Everybody ends up the same place. It doesn't matter. And so the conclusion that he comes to, which is hardly a conclusion at all, if you ask me, is, so we fear God and keep his commandments, which doesn't answer the problem that the writer of Ecclesiastes has. Because the problem still exists. Everybody still dies. Because he doesn't know about the resurrection. And so the reason why the resurrection matters and the reason why it changes everything is that now you're not just dead, right? You get to keep living. You see how that matters? Like if your life just ends, if it all just ends, then what you did doesn't matter. But if you get to keep living, then the choices that you made still matter because you're still living. And so that's why resurrection is the word. Not just go to heaven, not like the kind of Platonist's idea of some sort of like ethereal afterlife sort of thing, but specifically the word resurrection, because that ties what will be to what is now. And that's a big deal, and that matters. And that's why he says that we believe that he rose again, so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus. Even those who are dead will be with him because they will be resurrected like he was. Like, that's a big deal. Like, that language matters. The word matters. And I've done lessons like this, but you go through the sermons in Acts, and they all hinge on the resurrection. And you think about the sermon he gave in Athens, and he's preaching, and they love it, right? Their ears are tickled. Let me tell you about the unknown God. And they're like, oh, man, this is great. They love philosophy. They love debating this stuff. And he starts going through and talking about morality and all these things. And like they're right in line with him. Do you know when they throw him out? When he says that Jesus was resurrected because it contradicted what they believed. And that's the very thing that he's going back to here at Thessalonica, that Jesus rose again. That's the difference, because it means that what you do matters, right? The choices you make matter. The way you live matters. Because if you die, and we all die, and then you become something else or something separate or something, if there's some sort of dividing line there, well, then it didn't matter because we were all died. We all had the same thing happen. The equalizer still existed. And he says, no, there is no great equalizer death. You get to live. You're just sleeping. Like, those words matter because they infuse our lives back with meaning that's otherwise robbed. And you look at the world, right? Look at the people that say that Jesus was wise, and that's the reason why they like that is because they get to make choices then that they think are the ones that are going to give them the best life. Christians don't make the choices that give us the best life. We make the choices that give us the best eternity, which just so happens, I think, coincides with what gives us the best life. But it's hard, right? It's hard to practice self-control, to quit vices, to change the way you live, to change the way that you eat, and to practice this. But those are the very things that exhibit the character of God, which is then the very character that we have when we are in heaven. Because we will be with God, and we need to have the same character as him. And God is a God of self-control, and a God of peace, and a love of joy, and patience, and all these things. And so we exhibit those things now because we're preparing for when we are transformed into a state in which we can actually achieve those things fully and completely and all those. And so the resurrection that matters, a little bit of a side tangent, but I think that background matters to this idea of why this is so important. You had your hand up earlier, Rick. Yeah. It's how you get through. Because there is hope, right? Because there is something beyond. There is like a next thing. And that's how you get through. Otherwise, you don't. Right? Like, I mean, like if there's nothing on the other side, if there's no hope on the other side, then why would you go through it, anything difficult at all? But resurrection gives us hope, right? that there is something beyond, that there is a next step, that there is a reawakening, that there is a resurrection, that like it changes those things to where there is something beyond. And so the question that they seem to be having, though, which is interesting, is it seems like they have a fundamental misunderstanding about the resurrection, right? Because they're worried about people that have passed away before Jesus returns. So they have this idea of heaven, some way, shape, or form, of being with God and Jesus returning. It seems like they know those things, that Jesus is going to return and we're going to be with God. But they don't seem to understand about those that have fallen asleep. And in fact, if you go back, it seems like they wonder a little bit about whether or not they should even be carrying jobs and working hard. And like they've misunderstood a lot of this because they're like, well, Jesus is coming. So we just wait around and Jesus will come back and he'll take us to heaven and it's going to be great. But then they're like, but wait a second, he isn't back yet. And now this person has passed away. This person is gone. So like, what about them? Like, are they just robbed of the chance to go to heaven now? Like, if they missed out? And so they have this misunderstanding about it. Yeah. I guarantee you, Paul told them about the resurrection. Like, there's no way that he hasn't mentioned that, right? And yet they don't seem to understand it. So why do you think there's a disconnect here? Like, if you try to put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. Yeah, right. Surely a difference. Yeah, Michael.
Something happens, and then it's really open for everybody. You go, oh, I'm included. I'm included. There's that awakening, right?
Yeah.
That's the point where yes, I'm included. That's what verse 18 says. This should comfort everybody. Use this to comfort everybody, right? One another. And why would this be comfort? Because it applies to you. That's why.
Yeah.
If you do these things, this is what you look for.
Yeah, I heard an analogy as I was reading. One author used this analogy. I don't know if I like it very much, but it demonstrates something maybe, so we'll go with it. But he said, have you ever tried to describe color to somebody who was born blind? Like, how would you describe color to somebody who's never been able to see? And he's like, maybe you talk about red and you use words like angry, or you talk about like moods to kind of describe it, or you talk about like sharp or soft or, vivid, like how would you do that, right? And he said, that's what this is like. Like Paul, and, I guess he saw the resurrected Jesus, talks in Corinthians vaguely about some sort of weird experience he had that I don't know, but it wasn't him, but it was him. I don't know. But it's like, how do you understand that or describe that to somebody? Like, how do you describe what the resurrection is or what heaven is? It's like, I don't know. It's like trying to describe color to somebody who's never seen color. It's beyond. It's like there's a gap there. There's a little bit of a barrier. And so I think because of that, it's natural that you're just going to have trouble understanding whatever it is that Paul said. You're going to have trouble understanding what it is that he is saying. And I think that we struggle with what it is that Paul's saying. Like, what is resurrection? Like, what is a bodily resurrection? Because it's very clear that resurrection means that you were buried and you came back to life. That's what happened to Jesus. And Jesus, the first fruits of our resurrection, had holes in his hands. Does that mean that we have scars in heaven? And you're like, whoa, now we're having trouble, right? Now we have questions that make us uncomfortable. So like if I like lose a limb, am I resurrected without a limb? Because Jesus was resurrected with scars and he's the first fruits, and like, how do we understand this? And like, I don't know. He could walk through walls, but was that because he was resurrected in a different state, or is that because he was Jesus and could perform miracles? I have no idea. He ate fish, right? So like how much do we learn specifically about Jesus post-resurrection, about our resurrection? Is it like an image, an idea, or is it literally what it's going to be like? I don't know, right? I don't know. You're uncomfortable yet? Like most people, like I get uncomfortable trying to talk about it. Like I've had conversations, people get mad. when you start saying these things, because it's hard to know, but that's the idea. It's like color, right? And you've never seen color, and we're trying to describe color. And I think that that's part of the problem here. Paul was there, and he tries to tell him about the resurrection, and they're like, so we're going to go and be in heaven, but what about the people that died? And he's like, no, they're not dead, they're asleep. And you're like, what? Like, they're dead. Like, you keep using this word asleep, but they're dead. Like, we put them in the ground. And like, there's a challenge there, right? And he specifically says, comfort one another with these words, not precede those who have fallen asleep, be with the Lord. And I missed that somewhere. Verse 15 maybe. As we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. Like this idea that they're going to be there too. Like that's a hard concept. But he's like, that's the whole idea. Like that's the whole kit and caboodle, right? Like that's what this is all about. It changes everything. And that's the thing that then comforts you. That you will always be with the Lord. That death isn't the end. And that's a big deal. And that's the thing that he has to get it back to. Like, and it's hard. There's no other, it's a difficult idea, right? It's a challenging idea, but it's our hope. It's the thing that he's laid before us, that we will live again. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Anybody mad at me? It's fine if you are. Yeah, verse 13. That's what I was trying to look for before. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. Right. 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 And I think that's important there in verse 13, that you don't grieve as others do. That there's a change that's taken place, a perspective, a shift that's taken place, right? Because of the hope, your perspective has changed. I think we've experienced that and have seen that. And it's hard. He doesn't say you don't grieve. He says you just don't grieve like they do. Death is still the consequence of sin. It's still painful. It still hurts. It's supposed to hurt, right? It is a consequence. But at the same time, there's this pathway through. You know, it's Psalm 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. I mean, it's a resurrection psalm, really, is what David wrote there. I don't know if he intended it that way or not, but that's the idea. You pass through the valley of the shadow of death, and there's the Lord. And thy rod and thy staff will comfort me, right? Like that's the idea here, that there's a way through the valley of the shadow of death, so you don't grieve the way that others do. You have this pathway through. And so he's trying to remind them of that. Don't worry about them. They will be taken care of. Then there's this image that he uses in verse 16 of the Lord himself. And it says descend, which I think is a difficult word. And I think that highlights what he's trying to say here in verse 16. He's giving an image. I don't think that he's trying to describe exactly the way this is going to happen. And I think this is a problem we run into with the heaven language in Revelation. I think it's the problem we run into when we start talking about resurrection in the New Testament. Any of this sort of stuff is that the words are used because they have power and meaning, and we need to pay attention to them. But I don't know that they are trying to explicitly describe exactly what's going to happen the way that it's going to happen, right? Like, is heaven actually a city with streets paved with gold? Are the houses and everybody's space the size that it says and the dimensions? Are the jewels the way that they are? Is that what the point of the image in Revelation? I don't think so. I don't think he's describing literally what it's like, but I think it'd also be equally wrong to ignore the language and to not visualize that, because it's given to us for a reason, right? And that's the same sort of thing here. And so Jesus descending from the heavens, we think about coming down to the sky. Is heaven above us? Or is it a different dimension? Or is it a different plane of existence? Like, I don't know, but I don't think that it's just like right above the stars or something. Like, I don't think that that's the idea. So the idea of descending then becomes, it's descriptive. But so is the idea then of us who are alive and remain caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. I think the image that's being described here is similar to if a visiting dignitary or an emperor comes to a city and everybody goes out and meets them outside the city walls and brings them in, like the triumphal entry. I think that's the image that he's calling to mind here. I don't know that that's literally the way that it works, or that's the final step, or what happens after. Like, we don't know those things, but that's the image, right? We go and meet him and we bring him in, and we are dwelling with him. And there's value in seeing that image, right? That we get to go and meet him and welcome him home and get to exist with him for all eternity. Does that mean that heaven is earth? No, I don't think that that's the idea. I think that'd be silly to say that, just like it's silly to say that heaven is just like right there above, the sky, right? Like, it's descriptive language to help us see this. And so it's a challenge whenever you look at this language that's here in the New Testament, because it's trying to help us see a picture that's helpful, that gives us hope, that we can grasp and understand. And those words matter, and those are the things that we should think about. But I don't know that that means that it has to be that way. The way I look at it is like this. Sorry, John. The way I think about it is like this. As much as the Old Testament talks about the Messiah and the Savior, they got it completely wrong. So as much as the New Testament talks about heaven and resurrection and eternity, pretty sure I'm going to be just as wrong as they were, right? I don't know. Probably getting myself in trouble talking about things I don't need to talk about. Go ahead, John. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Right. Right. So then where did Jesus go? Right? Like, did he just like keep flying into the stars? Like it's the problem, like, because I think above and below are powerful images that God has given us. Right? Like, those alone are metaphors. Like, being above something implies power, implies control, right? Whereas being below something implies subservience and not knowing. They would sit at the feet of Jesus, like literally, and that's a powerful idea, isn't it? That you're sitting there at the feet of Jesus as he's preaching. It says something about that. And so, yeah, I think that he did ascend that way. Some argue that Jesus is still in bodily form in heaven right now. I don't know how that works. I don't know what heaven's like. I think that's probably whittling a little bit too far on God's into the stick to say that. The idea, though, is that these images matter, and I think we need to extract the meaning behind them more than the specifics, if that makes sense. That's fair. Thoughts? Comment? Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly right. The idea here is the comfort that he's offering specifically to them and the question they have about what they see as terminal, right? Death is terminal to them, and he's trying to help them see through that. And Brother Caldwell, of course, is correct. Like, there's other language that tries to help fill out the specifics of what that looks like, but I don't know that those specifics are tied together to give us the complete picture. There are the ideas and the concepts of comfort and care as we wait the resurrection and those sorts of things as well. But as he finishes all that, he gets into chapter 5, where he moves into this like next phase about when it's going to happen, which is interesting. Because does he tell them when it's going to happen? No, he says the opposite. Like, we don't know when it's going to happen. They had some expectation that it was going to happen in their lifetimes, which is not unsurprising. Do we have an expectation it's going to happen in our lifetimes? Yeah, maybe. Right. We don't know, right? Death comes unexpectedly, right? Like those sorts of sermons and ideas, like why not tonight, don't put off till tomorrow. All those things I think are valid, important things. But, I mean, I think about it probabilistically. Maybe I shouldn't. It's like the chances of it happening in my lifetime are probably low. I don't know that God's bound by probabilities and statistics, but, I don't know that generally we have the same expectation of that the way that they would have because of the time that's elapsed and all those things. And yet, it doesn't matter, does it? Does it matter if it's in our lifetime or, I mean, maybe if we're not saved yet, it might, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's really his point, isn't it? That the time doesn't matter. What matters is whether you're a child of day or a child of night. Which again, I love the imagery. I feel like I use this in sermons all the time. I don't know, maybe I do, maybe I don't. I feel like I use it all the time. I want to use it all the time. How about that? Because it's just vivid. Like the idea of being awake or the idea of being asleep. Like nice, bright daylight versus like dark of night. There's a difference. I'll go sit in the backyard, especially this time of year, early afternoon, you sit in the shade, it's a little bit cool, it's nice, and you just sit out there for a while. Leave your phone inside, leave all the electronics away, grab a book, don't grab a book, just sit out there and enjoy the weather and look around, look at the birds, look at the trees, and it's bright and it's beautiful, and it always cheers me up. Every time. I go sit outside at night. It's okay. But you can't see. And you hear something, and you're like, what's that? And we get tons of possums in our yard. And we get snakes in our yard. And it's amazing because we have a massive dog that barks at them like crazy, but the possums keep coming in our yard. It's like, you're in the backyard and you see a huge possum in the middle of the night. Those things are nasty, ugly creatures, right? Like, I don't want a possum sneaking up on me at night. I can't keep a shotgun out there. I live in the city. I'd get in trouble if I blasted a shotgun at a possum, If you're in the country, at least you can just shoot the possum. I can't even shoot the possum. So now I don't go out there, right? Don't go outside at night. I mean, that's, right? Like, that's the image, isn't it? Like the safety and security of the daylight where you can see where the warmth of the sun comes and it's beautiful and you're awake. At night, you're tired. It's dark. You can't see. You don't know what's going on. And he even makes the point, when do people get drunk? They get drunk at night. When do they sleep? They sleep at night. When are they the most unaware? At night. That's not who you are. You're not those sorts of people. You're children of day. You're awake. You're alert. You're sober-minded. And again, I love that imagery too. The contrast between drunkenness and being sober. Because he's not talking about morality of drinking here, right? Like, that's not his point. He's not listing virtues. He's not listing vices. And yet, inherent in his use of drunkenness and sober-mindedness, he demonstrates, I think, a really powerful point that does affect our sense of morality when it comes to drinking. You don't lose your self-control. You don't drink depressants because they cause you to lose your self-control. That's not who we are. We don't do those sorts of things. I mean, I've never been tempted by it, thankfully, and that's the reason why. I can't think of anything worse than not being in full control of my faculties. I mean, I say enough bad, dumb things when I am aware, right? Talk too much, say too much. I probably already have tonight. But where would you be blocking the resurrection and this hope from who you are just to be stuck in the darkness and to not be ready when the time comes? To where it is like a burglar coming in and taking everything you have. rather than being prepared and aware and ready. It's a big difference. Somebody knocks on your door and you're asleep. You got to wake up, go on a robe, or wander downstairs, or turn on lights. Figure out what's going on, and you're half asleep still, and your eyes are fuzzy, and you're like, who's this at the door? And you're nervous. Versus, it's the middle of the day, you're wide awake. You're dressed. Somebody knocks on the door, and you're like, hello, how can I help you? Although now I think everybody just puts no soliciting signs on their doors because we don't like the popovers, right? But, that's the difference, right? Like you're aware and you're awake versus unaware and unawake. And he says, because we are of the day, let us be sober, specifically putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. It's a little bit similar to the armor of God in the book of Ephesians, right? But it's interesting that he talks about faith and love and salvation as these three things that you clothe yourself in. Your character, your perspective, right? Your character and your belief. And it's this idea of like who you are and the way that you're preparing yourself. For, verse 9, God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will live together with him. Did you catch that at the beginning of verse 9? He hasn't destined us for wrath. It's not your destiny. It's not what you're meant for. It's not the intent. It's really easy to get it the other way, isn't it? To think that we're all going to hell unless we follow the magic formula. Now, of course, there's obligation to serve God. We clothe ourselves with the faith and the hope and the love that he talks about here. We are children of day, all those things, right? But it isn't that he's trying to cast us into wrath. That's not the destiny he intended for any of us. The whole reason why Jesus came was to change that, was so that we would be saved. That's the first and foremost goal, is to save people. That's why he came. That's what he's destined us for, obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. That's why he died. And I think he says it this way, one, because they were all believers already, right? People that he's talked to that are trying to serve God. And so they're already a part of that group, but also because he's trying to comfort and encourage them to understand what it is that's intended for them. Doesn't matter whether you're awake or asleep, right? Doesn't matter whether you've passed away or not. This is your destiny. This is the thing that he's let. We will live together with him. And I think it's interesting, we already talked about this a little bit, but in the first section in chapter 4, it's like, if we believe Jesus died and rose again. And here, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, we will live together with him. That's what will happen. It is the destiny, the plan. So, encourage one another. Build one another up, just as you also are doing. That's the pathway. That's the goal. So drag each other along with you as you go that way. Remind each other of that. That's the thing that you're doing. That's the encouragement. That's the takeaway. All of this stuff here is to encourage you to build one another up. And it's again goes back to the Ecclesiastes idea, right? What do people do that don't believe in God? What's their philosophy on life? If they have one, it's something like maximize the time you have. You only live one life. Might as well live it to the fullest, right? Live every day like it's your last. Something like that, right? This idea that we only get one chance, we got to do the best we can. Whereas the Christian's attitude is, no, we have hope for a future. So we encourage one another to stay focused on what matters. They make these post-apocalyptic, or these movies all the time. They were really popular when I was in high school, where there was some natural disaster where either the polar ice caps melted and flooded New York City, or a hurricane destroyed New York City, or a dinosaur came and destroyed New York City. They love destroying New York City. And it's always something like that, right? And the whole idea is that it's going to come to an end. And what happens is you have the few heroes that are going to try and stop it. Sometimes they just kill everybody. Sometimes they actually stop it, right? You don't know. But then there's everybody else, and everybody else is just like partying or something, right? Because it's like, well, we're all going to die anyway. Might as well do what we wanted to do all along. Like this kind of, he's like, no, like that's not the way that we live. Encourage one another, build one another up, live this way because you are children of day, because we will live with him, because we do have eternity before us. And so, yeah, you don't let go of the rope because there's no reason to. There's a long way to climb. I don't know. Hopefully that's helpful and encouraging. I think that's Paul's intent here, is to uplift and encourage them. So hopefully you all are encouraged by that. We'll finish 1 Thessalonians 5 and maybe do a quick introduction to 2 Thessalonians next week. We'll see how it goes. But I appreciate your comments and attention.